Welcome to another episode of This Week in Indies, where fun and laughter never end. This week, to chat about getting the most from a newsletter. How does one start building subscribers? Is it different for bloggers, authors, podcasters, or are there similarities? What should you leave out of your newsletter? What do you focus on? These questions and more will be answered. We sit down with a panel of authors at the round table. We'll also hear from C.O. Pannon with Fiction Atlas Press as she brings us books by indie authors that are like To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. As it's also March, we'll touch on the final week of prompts for March of the Writers, organized by the wonderful J.D. Estrada. Finally, prepare for action, magic, and adventure as we get the first look and words spoken from the fabulous David Green's third book in the Empire of Ruin series. He'll claim the last 5 minutes for his novel, set to release April 11th, and this is a series you don't want to skip out on. So get ready for a jam-packed experience with an amazing group of creatives. Here's your host for today, Madilynn Dale. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of This Week in Indies. We've got a great group to discuss the topic of today, which is newsletters, and I'm excited to hear everyone's thoughts. Also, if you're in the chat, drop some questions that you have about newsletters or add comments. But before we dive in, I want to mention, if you're watching on Facebook, send a star to let our hosts and producers know how much you appreciate what they do here at Go Indie Now. Every time you contribute, you get entered into our season prize package drawing with gift cards, swag, and more. And also, I know that it was mentioned in the intro about March of the Writers, but I want to just touch on that before we dive in. March of the Writers was created by J.D. Estrada. He has come up with a list of prompts for the month, and as we are coming into the final bit of it, here are the final prompts for the week. Best compliments, Eva. Full of thanks, Pals of Pens. How social of you, and in next week's episode. You can find more of this out, more information on JD Estrada, estradawriter.blogspot.com to get the full list, and you can keep doing these prompts even after March. But I'm Madilynn Dale, today's host, mixed fantasy author, and I'm going to be bringing in our group. Hey guys! So we're going to go around and I want you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you write, what you create, and then we'll dive into our topic. Vanessa, we are going to start with you.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Junta. I write the Soul Cavern series. Look, there's Javaja. There's the first one. It is an urban fantasy vampire, not vampire series. I'm also a freelance fiction editor. And I do I also run the Writing Tribe, which is a writerly support group and network on Facebook, Discord, Twitch, and various other places. That's me.
Sweet.
I'm S.M. Hillman professionally. I'm Sean Hillman. Apparently I can't find the mute button this morning. I'm a speculative fiction writer, game designer, blogger, have a lot of opinions on everything. You can find me at thewickedboys.com. I also help run the Writing Tribe on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. He's got a bunch of great late night writing sprints that are awesome that I have missed out on. Right.
Hello. That took me by surprise. I'm David Green. I write epic fantasy, as you may have heard if you caught the front of the show, and urban fantasy as well. And I have no opinions on anything, but I do have a newsletter.
All right, Allegra.
Hi, I'm Allegra Pescatore. I am a fantasy and soft science fiction author who mostly features characters with disabilities. I also do cover design and run the Plot Mom community over on Discord. And unlike David, I am very bad at newsletters, and I'm here mostly to learn and to represent those of us who really struggle with this topic.
Woo!
Hey guys, I'm Courtney, aka CL Cannon. I do a lot of things here on Going Now, like the Indie Connection and the monthly marketing tip. And I have lots of opinions on newsletters. That's what I do for most of my job. So I am really excited for the show. You can find me at the links that I can never point to below.
Yes. Yeah, Courtney's definitely like the guru on the show today. So, yeah. So we've got great people in the audience. A lot of fourth wall breaking with Vanessa. Anita's here hanging out with us. Sean's breaking the wall as well. And new month, who dis? LOL from Vanessa with a smiley face.
Yeah, the smiley face was supposed to be a link to the writing tribe, but apparently I can't put links in the chat. So
that's weird.
All right.
Very weird.
Yeah.
So guys, let's just hit the nail on the head. Why do we think newsletters are important?
Because it's a direct line to your fans. Whereas everywhere else, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, even Twitch, everywhere else, those users, the platform has control over what the users see and how the users interact and things like that. When you have a newsletter, it is specifically your people who want to hear from you. You have their email address and you have a direct line to them. So it is they're yours to do with what you wish. Not really, but you know what I mean.
Like Vanessa said, yes, they're yours. You can take them even if you're on a certain thing, like if say you're on MailChimp, you can take them to MailerLite, you can take them to whatever other mail service you want because they are yours. That's you're not tied to that platform. If something happens to that platform, if overnight the government's like, we're going to shut this down, then you still have all these people who are interested in your books and who you can directly communicate to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And on the flip side for that as well is that it's a direct way for your readers to get in touch with you. Because they have your email address too, which wherever you send out the newsletter, and that's important because obviously we try and set up a lot of different kind of social media and stuff where Facebook groups and Twitter and all these kind of things, but as we've seen this week, I think with the Brandon Sanderson article, with a lot of his fans kind of mobilizing to kind of voice their displeasure, a lot of fans want to know the writer and they want to have feel like they have a bit of their personality. So a newsletter lets you do that because it's a direct communication tool, but then they can also communicate back with you as well, which I think and it's a more of a private thing than just posting something on a Facebook group or something like that. So I think it's for people that really invest heavily into your books or you as a writer, the newsletter is the more kind of personal thing in a way than all the other ones.
Yeah, that's true. It does. Yeah.
It's also a way to reward really engaged and active fans and community members. You can send out some exclusive perks that other people may not get. And I do think that building those relationships with your readers can be really rewarding for both sides of the equation.
Agreed. Yeah.
Too, it's the one place where no one can complain that you're talking about your writing or your books too much. If people are like, "Oh, you talk about your books too much in your newsletter," that's a little bit ridiculous. So it's a safe place to really market yourself as well and say, "Here, this is what I'm writing. This is what I'm have written. These are the things. This is all the things that you want to see." So.
Some people do complain sometimes, though.
Yeah,
That's
but
what I was going to say.
that's the whole thing. They can self-select out. They can leave.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
The unsubscribe button is always there with newsletters.
But I think
I always like the one where when you do occasionally get like someone unsubscribe and then they put like the reason, and sometimes people just put like this, click whatever reason, but some people actually click other and they give specific reasons, and I always love the one saying, I don't remember signing up for this. It's like, well, someone did at some point. Like,
Yeah, for
one of
real.
us, yeah.
But that also makes a good point that your newsletter shouldn't just be you pushing your books.
Yeah.
It still
Yes.
shouldn't. None of your social media, none of your interaction should ever be just always pushing your book. You have to do more than that, because we don't connect with people who are trying to sell us stuff. We connect with people who are interacting with us, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Oh yeah, that does. Like mine lately have included a lot of like pics and stuff from hiking and being outdoors, or my gardening stuff, because I picked up like it's spring, it's finally warm. I get to do some of those hobbies again. So I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
I loved seeing it, Madda. I loved it.
And I mean, I include like a little bit of everything of like going now and my stuff as well. But it's really fun to connect with people that way, because there's people I feel like respond to your newsletters that wouldn't on social media, you know?
Mhm.
Definitely.
And Courtney, yours is always really good. I'm gonna like
you.
highlight you for a second. Let's tell us how you normally set yours up.
Well, I'm supposed to be sending bi-weekly, but lately I haven't because I've had surgery and a bunch of other things. But usually I send bi-weekly, and so I have two different templates that I go with. The first week, the first newsletter of the month, I send out, start with like what's going on with my life. It's always short and sweet, and then I ask them, "Hey, what's going on with your life? Tell me like what you've been watching. Tell me what you've been reading. Have you been, are you going anyplace cool soon? Or I want to know about you." So or hit reply and let me know about you. Then if I've got any appearances or interviews, I'll put that there. Then I've got a deals section that has books that are on sale. These are usually my newsletter swaps, but I always structure it as something valuable to them. I'm like, these are deals. You better get these while they're hot. Go get them now. And then I've got I think this one is the one where I just have like one giveaway and then a poll. I do a reader poll, and then my reader group like invitation at the bottom. I have that at the bottom of all of mine. But the poll is usually like something crazy, but I can actually use the data later when I am writing. So I'm like, what's your favorite fantasy weapon? What's your favorite fantasy subgenre? I have a lot of different questions that I've asked, and I use a GIF that's usually kind of funny because people respond to GIFs. They click on that, they get another funny GIF that thanks them for clicking on it. But my other one has reviews in it. It's got the same structure, but it's got like what's going on in my life, and then if I've got any appearances, and then it's got all the reviews that I have read for that. All the books I've read for that month that I reviewed, I put them there. Unless I've just went crazy and read like 10 books, so then I choose like 3 or 4. But that gets people, to know more about me, what I think about other books, and people respond to that. And then I've got giveaways and deals again, but it's a shorter one. Then I have a link to my blog that has 10 free stories. So all free stories this time.
Ooh.
Sorry, it's been a while. It's been like 2 months since I had a regular newsletter. But that one goes to my blog. Then I make Amazon affiliate off of that. So it's all good. They get stuff. I get stuff. It's fun.
Yes. Yes. And Sean, you do a blog as well. How do you do that with your newsletters?
Well, I haven't done a newsletter in a long, long time. But as far as the blog goes, I think the plan is that to use the newsletter to funnel people to the blog, and then vice versa, right? That your various pieces of social media and connection to people on the outside really need to. I mean, ultimately, they need to funnel people towards your creative parts, books and stories and whatnot. But ultimately, I think that the newsletter really needs to tease people. Hey, this is a cool thing. You should go check it out. and the blog absolutely would be one of those.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything to add on that? Vanessa, do you have some intriguing things that you add to your newsletters?
Mine's actually very similar to Courtney's, which I think is hilarious. I have, what's going on in my life at the beginning, and I'll sometimes put pictures. Like on my anniversary one year, I put my wedding picture in there so people could see, what I looked like when I was young. And I have an appearances section, and I have I have a fun stuff section and an interesting links section. And usually in one or the other of those is where I put my newsletter swaps. And I have a section for Patreon information and a section for, what's the other section? I don't remember. I have another section. And not every newsletter has all of those sections. I pick and choose and stuff like that. And at the end, I have a question, just like Courtney does. Although I don't do the polls. I think that's a really cool idea. But at the end, it's like, hey, what's the most recent movie you saw? What did you think of it? Or, what's your favorite season and why? Or what, if you've read my books, who's your favorite character? And stuff like that. So it's fun getting that back. So
yes. And we had a few more people pop into the chat. Books by Tiffany is here. A.L. Mingle dropped in as well. And Anita says fantasy readers in general should vent their displeasure over that article. It was a disgrace.
The brand
in reference to David's comment earlier.
It was very much like, there's a lot of things to unpack in that whole thing, just from top to bottom, but the general kind of vibe of fantasy fans in there wasn't great, and it was kind of like that thing. It's like, are we not past this thing now where people that like fantasy are smelly and spend money on swords that they don't need and stuff like that? Like, are we not beyond this? Right? Have we suddenly gone back into like the 1990s or something? Like, it was very, very strange altogether.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hilarious because that person who wrote that article has watched Lord of the Rings, probably watched Supernatural or any of those things that are in that genre.
Yeah.
And it's just like, come on.
Well, here's my biggest problem. The article is terrible. The initial premise actually is probably a good one to discuss. If you want to discuss Brandon's actual prose, I think it's fair to discuss that.
Sure.
But it's, and not to get too far off topic, but the article is terrible. It's terribly written. The person who should be immediately let go, in my opinion, is the editor. You can send the writer to the bullpen for a while, but the editor, how could the editor look at that and say, oh yeah, this is good, because it wasn't good.
Yeah, because again, just on that point about the prose, because that is a good question, and the thing is that he probably did speak about that, but the writer said, I'm not going to use any of the words that he's told me apart from these 7 at the end, because he has talked about it before about how his prose was quite basic at the start and he's improved, but he keeps it at a certain level to make it accessible to people, and that's an interesting thing. Does that make him a good writer? Does it make him a bad writer? That's interesting, but the guy wasn't interested in it.
Yeah. Right. And also, I snagged the Writing Tribes link for Facebook. If you guys want to check it out, it's a great group. I'm part of it myself, obviously.
That was you. I thought that was Joe.
Yeah, I'm under the Go Indie Now thing right now because it's through the show. So, and where did that go? Books by Tiffany says, all good information. I can't wait to add some of this to my newsletter. Which kind of brings me to the next question. What are some of the ways you guys have found subscribers? And I know Courtney's got some great stuff, so I'm saving that.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about it. Kind of like, what have you guys done and utilized to get those subscribers?
Reader magnets was the main one for me. Actually, sorry, no, that's not a lie, but it's kind of jumping ahead a little bit. The first ones are basically your friends and family who will tolerate your incessant bullshit about writing. Not people that work for Wired apparently, but everyone else who wants to listen about writing and other things like that. So they're the kind of first ones, and your kind of peers and other people that you've kind of found like right in your writing family, I guess, and like, you know, those early kind of fans that you've got when you get to that point where it's like, I should really have a newsletter, so let's get one. So you get it all up, and those are the first, the early adopters, and then, you know, you get people then that will find it through your work, which is always brilliant. You know, that's great when people organically want to come to it and want to join it. But then for me, then a lot of it is through reader magnets. With that, it's obviously a little bit of extra kind of work, and there is a cost with that as well. But I think it's well worth investing in it if you get a good book, like Book Funnel or something like that, or something similar. But the main thing is to get something that you can use for a reader magnet. So it's one of those things that you want to kind of put a little bit of time into, because you want to have like a decent enough cover for it. You don't want to spend loads of money into this thing unless you've got something that's already there that you can use, but you want it to look good enough. You want it to be an accurate reflection of what your stories and what your other books are. You want to have the rights to it as well. So if it's short story collection, you want to make sure that you have the rights and they're not like tied up with anthologies or anything like that. And you want to make sure that you're advertising it at the right people. So like, I learned this kind of the hard way, because when I first started getting into writing, I was doing short stories quite a lot, and I was doing a lot of horror ones, which I don't write, and I wasn't kind of thinking I was going to write a novel length. It was always going to be fantasy when I kind of like got a bit of practice. But when I started my newsletter, it was all I had was horror kind of short stories and what have you. So I was kind of getting a lot of horror people onto my newsletter, and it got to the point where it's like, look, this isn't going to be for you guys anymore unless you like fantasy as well. And so that there is that thing where it's like, if you are going to go into doing a reader magnet, or when you are launching your newsletter, make sure that it's aimed at the right people, and because otherwise they're not going to get anything out of it, and you're not going to get anything out of it either, because it'll be the wrong type of people for what you're trying to do. So it's all these things that you need to consider, but they can be very, very valuable, and they can drive a lot of people to your newsletter.
Agreed.
The end.
Being a convention organizer, volunteer has actually been super useful. You meet other writers, which is always good. And you're able to curate topics which you have questions for as well. When you part of like a panel, for instance, and you equip yourself, people take notice, and then you can hand out business cards or QR codes and things like that, and get people at the conventions. It's it's not a huge return on investment. That hasn't been for me so far, but I do know that it can be successful in that way.
And to piggyback off of that, if you're selling at a convention or anywhere, you put out a clipboard with a sign-up sheet for your newsletter. I've gotten a number of signups that way. Although I think I'm trying to change it. I'm going to change it up and make it like a tablet with a keyboard, so they can so I don't have to then try to read their handwriting, because some people don't have the best handwriting. So I found that's useful as well. And Courtney mentioned earlier newsletter swaps. That is often a good way to do it as well. Someone else who has a newsletter, promotes your book or whatever, and then they read it, they like it, they sign up, and they become one of your fans. That's also a thing. But my biggest are, and I'm just going to like lob this over to Courtney because she's the best at this I've seen, is the big kind of group promos, honestly. And so Courtney.
So everybody knows I run Fiction Atlas, and we do newsletter promos, social media promos, and things like that. So of course, a lot of the people on my newsletter are from promos, because I get to do it for free because I'm running them. So that's very cost effective for me. But
it's also, a lot of work, though. Totally a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I've been doing newsletter promos for, I want to say 5.5, almost 6 years now. But anyways, let me just explain what a newsletter builder is. A newsletter builder is when a lot of, well, you can do it on your own, but as I'm talking about it here, I'm talking about a group builder. So a few authors get together according on how many you want in the promo and how much you're going to be able to buy in. So I try to keep mine very cost effective. All my newsletter builders actually are $25 to join. And then you can add like a social media builder for like $5 extra. So anyway, I'm rambling now. What happens is we decide on a theme. Let's say like we just did a Brandon Sanderson builder to keep that on topic today. So everybody who writes books that are kind of like Brandon Sanderson would join this newsletter builder. They'd pay their $25 buy-in and then they'd wait for the builder to go live. So then I make this giveaway. It's a group giveaway. And I would have like a few of Brandon's books, then some stuff from his series like Funko Pops or we've got mugs, we've done art prints, stickers, book sleeves, all kinds of anything that is bookish related and that is related to the theme, we will put in there because that draws people in. Readers will then enter this contest and for a chance to win, but they're also agreeing to sign up for your newsletter. So all of these people get together after that, and we choose a winner with the giveaway software. They get all the cool stuff, but they also, along with everybody else, get added to all the participating authors' newsletters. And so then we send out our welcome emails to these people, and they get to know more about us and about our books and become fans, hopefully. Of course, not everybody will, because every newsletter builder is filled with people who, want the freebie and will end. But those are not your target people in the first place. The thing that's kind of different about the way that I do them is that I very much genre target them. So if you're going to do a newsletter builder, try to make sure that, as David was saying, that they're your people. You don't want horror people if you write fantasy. You don't want erotic romance if you're writing fantasy. You want to completely get it down as niche as possible, so those people stick around for what you're going to be offering them. Usually when you send your welcome email, you will give them what they call a cookie, which is like your reader magnet, or offer them something in return. Some people do that automatically. I actually make them work for it. For anybody who signs up for my newsletter, I don't start with a cookie. I actually just start with you signing up to my newsletter. And then you get through my welcome email, and at the bottom, it asks me I ask you to tell me something about you. And if you do, then I send you your choice of one of my magnets. So that way I'm not giving away a ton of free books. I'm just giving it away for people who actually want to stick around and who are going to read my whole newsletter. And it kind of saves me a little bit on that. But other than newsletter builders, I also get people all the other same ways by being on shows like this, by having links in the back of my books, newsletter swaps, putting things up on Story Origin, which is a really good resource. There's all kinds of really good places out there besides newsletter builders that you can get them from that are organic. So it's good, I think, to have sort of a little bit of everything and see what works for you personally.
I agree. And kind of piggybacking off of that, I use Story Origin for a lot of my stuff. If you don't want to do all the research and have to hunt stuff down, although you can join like C.L. Cannon's groups to get those newsletter builders, but Story Origin has like a dashboard where you can set up reader magnets, book hooks, like review copies, beta reading, all of that. Like it's super duper easy to do. So I love that it's all there. And I know there's some other places that are good with all of that too. Do you guys use different stuff for that other than Story Origin?
I've used BookFunnel, but honestly, Story Origin has surpassed BookFunnel. I don't use BookFunnel very much anymore because Story Origin has so many useful things in it, like the beta reading. Oh my gosh! Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing! And just the sheer number of useful services that Story Origin has created makes it much more cost effective, because it is paid. You have to pay for it, which is valid. It's got a lot of really good, useful stuff. But I have found that it has pulled ahead of BookFunnel. BookFunnel, I think, started first, But it's just so useful. And Anita said, I love the story origin beta reading. It is fabulous because it's set up like it is, Google Docs or Microsoft Word's track changes, and it's just so well done. So yeah, I absolutely story origin has become my go-to.
Yeah, and even for the art copies, like you can notify people that have signed up to review your book that your book is published, and it sends them all the links to like Goodreads, BookBub, Amazon, wherever you've got it listed, and they can just go do it. So.
Yep.
I also love it because Evan is always taking our feedback. And if there's something that's broken, if there's something that we want, he's on it. Like he puts it on his list. He doesn't just say, oh, okay, we'll get to that. He actually puts it on his list. And usually within a short amount of time, it is done unless it's just something super complicated. He's always trying to make things better. And I think that's more important to me than if Book Funnel came first or if it has these features. I want someone who's going to listen to what I want and what works for everyone. And I don't know. I love Evan. He's just awesome.
Yes. So responsive.
Yes. Allegra, David, Sean, do y'all have anything to chime in on with that? Any experience using different other companies to do any of that?
Yeah, well, I've used Book Funnel, but I'm not going to be defending them to the hill or anything like that. They're fine. For what I do. I've not looked into Story Origin for using it. I have my own set of beta readers and stuff now that I've been working with for a while that I kind of do. But I think if you haven't got those, that sounds like a great kind of thing to do. So yeah, I actually think Book Funnel is more expensive than Story Origin these days as well. So maybe I'll swap over because it's I'm not in love with them or anything like that. Maybe I'll fall in love with Story Origin.
I did.
They're relatively cheap and very budget friendly. Allegra, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I found that for me personally, the way my my schedule and my brain work, I have a really hard time keeping up with all of the group promos. I can do one at a time, but if it starts getting overwhelming, I've always had difficulty with that. So for me, a lot of my getting newsletter subscribers is directly interacting with people in communities and just being someone who is supportive of other authors enough to get people to want to pay attention, to learn more about the community. And I think that this is something that Courtney does so well in that, when you uplift others, you have ability to reach people in, I think, a very genuine way, where you are at the level that they are. You are excited about the people that you're talking about, the reviews of books that you're putting out. You are a reader as much as you are an author, and I do think there's value in relating to people and focusing on that as well.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Your author friends will are definitely another resource, right? Not only for inspiration by reading their newsletters, but also they'll talk about you, even though they won't necessarily tell people they're talking about you, but they do talk about you. And they point people towards your writing and things like that. So I think that's, I know I enjoy reading the newsletters of my author friends. And I make sure that I open it up every time it arrives and I read through it because I know that's important. So,
that is a great way to support them, especially even if just clicking on things, if you're not going to buy it, just kind of help that click rate go up too. So,
and I think that's a really good point too about networking with other authors. I know, I pimp my author friends' books all the time.
Yes.
And so that can also lead to newsletter signups for them, right? So that whole networking component can be really important. I have author friends who, obviously I'm not gonna recommend their book to somebody who doesn't read that type of book, obviously, but word of mouth is also a very good thing for newsletters, when you're talking about other people, right? You know what I mean? Just like Allegra was saying, you lift up others and you are also lifted up.
Yep. Yeah. So anybody else want to add into that? Awesome. We're going to take a break here and check out another fantastic thing from Miss C.L. Cannon that's here this week's Indie Connection, guys, and it's got some great books on it.
Hey guys, C.O. Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of To Kill a Kingdom by Alexandra Christo. The first book I have for you is called Of Sea and Song by Chanda Han. I killed a man to protect my sisters, and now I am a fugitive. With bounty hunters hot on my trail, willing to take me dead or alive, I'm forced to disguise myself as a cabin boy on the Belladonna. I should have been safe at sea, but I cannot escape the dangerous feelings evoked by the ship's handsome captain. For I am Marisol, one of the adoptive daughters of Lady Yvel, and to escape my past and save my friends, I will make an uncertain bargain with a shady sea witch. The deal sounds too good to be true. What could possibly go wrong? The second book I have for you is called The Siren's Mutiny by Jessica S. Taylor. Bridget knew the superstition, but when her father tried to marry her off, she had no choice but to stow away on a ship bound for Bodeas. When she's discovered and discarded, her fate seems sealed, until she's saved by the ocean and its queen. Transformed into a siren and given a new life, Bridget now has the power to seek revenge on those who wronged her. Callum has spent his entire life trying to help those who couldn't help themselves. After years suffering the cruelty of his pirate father, saving others from a similar fate was ingrained in him. But when he's unable to save a young girl from being thrown overboard for hiding away, he's devastated. Until one day, when he's thrown into the water by unseen forces, he comes face to face with the past, and maybe his future. But there's a darkness lurking on the seas they both call home, and Callum and Bridget have no idea how intertwined their stories really are. The third book I have for you is called A Song of Silver and Gold by Melissa Caribbean. Out in the open sea, it's kill or be killed. No one knows that better than Kaelin. For the past year, Princess Kaelin of Avalon has disguised herself as a man, Captain K, and led her crew into tumultuous waters to eradicate sirens on a journey fueled by revenge for the death of her brother. When they return home and experience a fatal siren attack on Avalon's harbor, Kay sets sail again to destroy the sea demons once and for all. Aquera is a siren warrior of Mariel, an underwater kingdom hidden from humans. When her negligence during the Avalon harbor attack causes the death of Mariel's princess, she accepts the help of a sea witch to overturn her banishment. Aquera is given a human body and has until the next full moon to carve out Captain Kay's heart in exchange for a spell to bring the dead princess back to life. When Kay's and Aquera's paths cross, they fall into a whirlwind romance, complicating their respective plans. Kay must decide whether her desire for revenge against sirens overrides her feelings for the woman she's falling for, and Aquera must choose between resurrecting the dead princess or sparing Kay's life. And the last book I have for you is called Dark Waters. It's an anthology, so there's multiple authors. Water doesn't need to be deep to be dark. A remote mountain lake where the locals wear iron anklets for protection. A ghost ship. A goddess. A pearl diver who finds much more than she's looking for. The true story about a familiar fairy tale, and more all lurk within these pages. Featuring dark fantasy and horror, Dark Waters explores the darker side of water and the creatures that inhabit it. The horror is both above and below. Proceed with caution. Okay, that's all from me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
All right, guys.
I love that music.
Yes. Those are some good books, too, especially that last one. That one really caught my attention.
I definitely bought some this week.
I believe it, man. It's hard not to buy those when they come up. So
I know. They're so pretty.
So our next question, guys, is how do you decide how often to send out a newsletter?
I send a poll to my readers and ask them how often they'd like to hear from me, and because I was just sending once a month, and you should send at least once a month to anybody who wants your newsletter who hasn't went to just like new releases only, because that keeps your sender reputation good. So but my people just said, hey, I'd like to hear from you 2 times, or at least the majority of them did. And I also give them at the bottom of my newsletter, they can update their preferences so that they can get the newsletter just when I have a new release, or they can unsubscribe. But that way they have choices. They don't have to be like dialed into every 2 weeks if they don't want to.
Ooh.
I have a question for Courtney.
Yeah.
How do you've talked about polls a lot. So do you have, do you just like ask the question and then they reply to you, or do you have an actual poll where you don't have to collate all the answers yourself?
In MailerLite, there is a survey thing that I think you can put a poll in. I have not done that yet because I'm still on classic MailerLite in my old template, and I'm too lazy to go over to the new stuff. But I just use GIFs. I just use the gallery block, and I have 4 GIFs. And I just, find some funny ones that kind of relate to whatever I'm talking about. And they just click on them. When they click on them, the link just goes to a thank you GIF. And then I look at the my click map. I can't talk. My clip map. And I just do the percentages after that and put them in the next newsletter and tell everybody like the results. So.
Nice. I know MailChimp has a way you can do polls and stuff with it. It's not easy to set up because it can kind of be confusing, especially for those who are not techie, which is me. I'm not super techie, but it does record all the clicks and everything for you. So
MailChimp have just increased their prices, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. I was like, oh.
Yeah, they've lowered the free limit down. And
Ron, you have no idea how much I put in my newsletter.
There's 3 David Greens, actually. There's a David Green that writes history that I occasionally get emails from saying, like, are you doing any signings for your history book that you released in 2009? And I'm like, not at the moment. Thanks for reaching out to me.
But for you other guys, like, what do you guys use to determine besides like the polls? Do you base it off of your schedule, how many you're going to send out?
Sorry, go. Sorry.
Go ahead.
When I have something to say, and I know that this is very counterintuitive to all the actual, if don't listen to me if you want a successful newsletter, because you know what I've achieved. But what I have achieved is a successful relationship with my reader base. I'm very interactive with them. That's why I love Discord as my primary social media platform. But I feel like if I'm going to send a newsletter out, I don't want it to be something that will waste a reader's time. I work in game development, and there's this concept of pillars and values. And so I did a little bit of that work on my author platform. And one of the values that I always really, really try to maintain is respecting my readers' time. And so I try not to bombard them with things that I don't feel passionate about and I don't feel like is actually true to the platform that I'm building and the books that I'm writing and the type of relationship I want to build with my readers.
That's smart. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that, I think that's really important. And it ties into sort of something I was going to say about this is figure out what works for you too, because, for some people putting together 2 newsletters a month is too much. And if you're not consistent, that's when you start losing people. You start, they start forgetting who you are or whatever. And so you show up in their inbox, after like 4 months of not hearing from you. And they're like, who the hell is this? Right. So I think also, in addition to what Allegra said, which I think is really smart, think about what your own personal abilities are in that regard. Can you keep up with a newsletter, every week? Because for me, I can't. Like, that's too much for me. I just, and then I end up putting it off and putting it off, and I get into that procrastination spiral
Yeah.
where I put it off and it's like, oh my God, it's been too long. So let me put it off longer because that makes sense. So I've recognized that they hear from me at least monthly, but I try to do twice a month. It's not every 2 weeks or anything like that. It's usually about every 15 or 16 days. That's my ideal. Right now it's only once a month because my life is in chaos. So they're getting it once a month. But I think it's really important to recognize your own limitations and or preferences, right? So
That's a good point. So.
Yeah, I'm very forgettable as a person, so I do it every 3 weeks.
Yeah, because there are multiple copies of you. So
Why
do we have to keep track of
it's
you?
hard to keep track of which one. So I send it out every 3 weeks. I split the difference between monthly and every 2 weeks. So it's like no one wants to hear from me every 2 weeks or weekly, but maybe 3 weeks is fine. So that's what I kind of do. But like Vanessa was saying earlier on, if back almost an hour ago, that it's not always about trying to sell stuff to people. In fact, like most of the time for people that are in my newsletter or my Facebook group, they're the people that I try to sell to less, because they're like people that kind of invested a little bit more time, and if they are going to buy stuff. Mostly that the people that I kind of try to offer arcs to, or if something is going for, if I'm doing like a free promotion, they'll hear about it first, and it's like, here, just here's the thing, take it, because what I kind of figure is those people that kind of get very, very invested will more than likely go and buy the stuff anyway, and they'll tell people about it, and they'll tell their friends that also like reading about it, and that's what all the other kind of adverts are for on Amazon and Facebook and wherever else, BookBub and everything. That's what they are for. They're the ones that you're trying to bring people into like your kind of sphere of influence. But the people that are kind of like the closest to you, like so in a Discord server as a Legwood user or a newsletter or a Facebook group, you kind of want to treat them very, very well, because they're the people that are going to go out there and kind of get more people and use word of mouth to spread about your work if they like it, which hopefully they do. Yeah.
Anybody else want to add into that? My camera keeps moving because my desk shakes. Like it's not very sturdy, or I have too much crap on it. That could be it too. So
I'll add one thing that's kind of a different point. But I think a lot of people think you have to send to your entire newsletter every time you send a newsletter, and sometimes it's valuable, especially if you have a certain content that's different, or if you write in different genres, to only send to a certain portion of your newsletter, something that's very specific to them. Because then, I mean, you can send to everyone, but not everyone's going to open it. Not everyone's going to be interested, and you might be bothering them with an extra newsletter when you could send one out shortly to someone who is definitely interested, and make that sell without bothering the other people. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't do that they maybe should try.
I think that's an excellent point. My newsletter, when I first started my newsletter, I was editing. I mean, I still edit professionally, but that was the majority of my job. I was writing, but I wasn't publishing at that point. And so most of my early newsletter readers are writers. So I actually have my newsletters segmented into readers and writers. Mm-hmm. And I send most newsletters to both groups, because writers are also readers, right? But there are certain things that are writing focused that I only send to the writers segment, because the readers, it's not their thing, generally speaking. So, yeah, I agree.
I like the segment thing. Like, I think I might start utilizing that a little bit more. So
how much do you guys like tag your readers? Do you have like tags that tell you where everybody came from, or do you just have like massive groups?
I do utilize tags, especially since I've done a lot of your builders. I'm like, okay, we did this builder. I title it whatever builder it was, what time of the year it was, and like the year, obviously.
That's what I do. That's helpful.
Because I can send out welcome newsletters to those, like, welcome aboard, blah, 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 blah. Here's a little bit about me, and thank you for signing up via whatever at the time. So anybody else?
It took me a long time to figure out how to use them in a way that works for me, because initially I was going by, like entrepreneurs, non-writer entrepreneurs talk about tagging for this and tagging for that and tagging for that other thing. These are your potential, these are people who bought from you and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, oh my God, that's way too complicated. But I use tags primarily to see where I got them from, because I have different onboarding automations depending on where they came from. Like the final onboarding part, the last couple emails are the same for everybody, but the initial email that they get, I tell them where they signed up, because a lot of times people who do builders don't actually necessarily realize, because people don't read. We're human beings. We don't pay much attention to much of anything. But, so like I tell them where they signed up for, and I talk about, whatever I talk about. And so each place that I get them from has a different start point. So it's tagged for that purpose. But also I have, I clean my lists regularly, usually about quarterly. I'll go through and, in most newsletter services, you've got a way to see who your cold subscribers are, like the ones who have not engaged, that the service has not tracked as having engaged in any way with your newsletter, meaning they haven't opened them, or they haven't clicked on anything or whatever. And so I'll take all my cold subscribers and put them through another automation that says, hey, I noticed you haven't been interacting or whatever. If you're not interested in being on the newsletter receiving the newsletter anymore, that's super cool. Just don't interact with these emails and I will take you off. But if you want to stay, please click this link. And then those get tagged as having gone through that process. So I don't keep putting them through the process, because there are some ways, like for me, I block images as a default in my emails, as like emails I receive. So there's no way for the service to track whether I've opened it or not, unless I allow the images in that email to show. So I often don't seem like I'm interacting with an email, even if I've opened it. If I click on it, obviously they'll have a record of me clicking on it, but clicking on a link. But most tracking is on an invisible pixel that's at the bottom of an email. Right. And so if I'm not opening images, they don't get that. So so that's what, and so I assume that there are other readers who are similar to that, or read in the preview or whatever. So I want to make sure that the people who are on my list want to be on my list. So I make sure that I run my cold subscribers through that automation about quarterly. I think I do it. So
that list hygiene thing is very important. It's really good.
Yeah. It also affects your open percentages, right? Because if you've got more people who have actively said, yes, I want to be here, then number one, they're going to be like, oh, I should engage in the emails so that she knows I'm engaging in the emails. But number two, it means that all that dead weight is gone. So your percentage, like my percentage of opens is typically well over 40%.
That's good.
I mean, yeah. And part of it is because of this. I wrote, I make sure that I get rid of the people who are not interested in what I have to say. There's no shame in that. There's no, oh, I'm going to get rid of them because they don't like me. No, because it's just business.
And there's no sense in paying for those people either, especially once you get out. I've got 16,000 subscribers. It gets expensive.
Yeah.
So cull them when you can.
Yes. I keep bouncing just under 1,000. So like I can't lower my thing, because every time I add people, it bumps me up, because like 1,000 is the threshold. I use ConvertKit, and 1,000 is like the first threshold. And like, I can't bump it down, because every time, like, I'm just like hovering back and forth. So.
Yeah. And unfortunately, those numbers do make a difference in how much you're charged for your newsletter services. It's a fun thing. I wish it was cheaper. So
yes. I mean, I wish everything was cheaper, but they also wish my books were cheaper. So, it is what it is.
Yeah. But we got to
Look,
pay for it.
most of our books are cheaper than a cup of coffee, so
Well,
we
that's
can't do
true.
much cheaper.
That's a good point.
Don't buy a cup of coffee today, guys. Go buy our books.
That's
Online.
right.
Yes.
That's right. I'll send you coffee. Buy my book.
Yeah.
Brew your coffee at home, make a whole pot, stay up all night reading.
Yes,
Exactly.
no.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Buy an ebook a day instead of a coffee. And
Yes.
drink at home instead. Yeah.
Yes.
That sounds good.
And
You don't even have to read the books; just buy them.
yes. Ron dropped a
No,
question.
no. We were talking about gardening earlier.
We
so
were.
you
That's
can
what I was
come
going to
here.
say. Is before the show started, Ron, we were definitely right up your alley. Even though Joe says because they know you have that market corner, we
Yeah.
absolutely I had to show
We-
off.
We also on the show that Ron was supposed to appear on the other night, which he just overslept for and didn't bother appearing. We talked about gardening the entire time.
Yes, we did. We did. Ron, you'd be so proud of us. So I mean,
Yep. Snooze,
Tired
you
as
lose,
well
you guy.
garden.
You snooze, you
This
lose.
afternoon, I should be sending a newsletter, and I'm 100% going to be gardening instead.
My
You make Ron
garden
proud.
makes it into the newsletter, so I've got to share the whole new little dwarf trees I've got that I showed you before the show, guys. They're going in the newsletter today.
Yay!
And then Regine says, "Buy one a day. Let's watch this TBR list get to the moon."
Oh, mine is already on the moon for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
That's what's good about Kindles. It's just you can't see it.
They
You
just
don't
sit
know.
there.
They just pile up.
Yeah, I've got
digitally forever.
audiobooks like that. They just sit there.
Yeah.
you scroll through like it's your little life, like because it is a little library. You're like, oh, what mood am I in today?
Yeah.
I'm gonna read this one.
That, yes, exactly.
I just scroll through them sometimes and go, "These look really great."
Yes,
You're so glad I bought them.
but
I put it down and then I go and do something else. I'm like, well, that was great. That was
Let me
fulfilling.
reread my comfut read for the 27th time.
That was me. Like I've got like 10 arcs to read, and I'm like, I'm gonna read Six of Crows again.
They're such bad examples.
I know, guys. I know. And Joe says, I planted my ass in the office here. There's my contribution to gardening.
I'm actually getting ready to plant some lettuce seeds for my hydroponic system. I'm gonna get little seedlings and then put them in my new hydroponic system.
Yay! Joe, I'm going to send you some mint plants because my mint plants have kind of taken over my yard. So,
and my pepper tree, I call them trees because they're big, but my little pepper plants, I thought that was it. I thought they were done, but then because I have one pepper left and I have two pepper plants. But now they've got flowers again. I'm like, all right. So there we go.
No, but actually talking about gardening, Ron has got his wicked way as usual.
You're not even on the show.
Give me Ron.
But for real, guys, to get back on topic, let's go around and tell everybody where they can find you and some of your books. We're going to start in reverse order with Miss Courtney.
You can find me at that thing down there at clcannon.net, at my link in bio. I'm on all social media except for Snapchat. And I need to get more on TikTok. I've not been very active on there except for just reposting everything. But you can find my books on Amazon and all of the other platforms because I'm wide. And yeah, we just did Inking Incantation. We did the Kickstarter for that. We got 140 some backers. It was amazing. So we're really excited about that. We got a new anthology coming out the end of this year. So yeah, that's all my stuff. Bye.
Sweet. Thank you for being on today.
Yeah, definitely.
Hi, folks.
Sorry, I hit a button.
Pretty much everywhere online as Author Allegra on Facebook, on Twitter, on TikTok. I also have a thriving Discord community that's a lot of fun. My books are pretty much everywhere. And I recently released the audiobook of the second book in the Last Gift series. So if you do have a giant stack of audiobooks, consider adding mine to the top. They're big and chunky. They'll make your list grow. You know, it can be taller than you are, and that's kind of cool.
Sweet, sweet, sweet. Sean, you're muted.
So you can find me at thewickedboys.com. I've got several Kindle Vela stories that are starting to ramp up. And you can check that out on Kindle Vela. Look for me for SM Hillman on there. You can find me as a member of the writing tribe, but I'm like the number 2 or number 1. Vanessa's number 1, or XO for the writing tribe. And we'll find me in a few weekends at JordanCon. I will be, I am the science fiction track director for JordanCon. So if you're going, go ahead and stop by and say hello.
Sweet.
Hey, I don't have to pimp the writing tribe this time. Awesome. So you can find me. You can find all my stuff here. Also, I have a show here on the Go Indie Now network that is it's called A Conversation and a Cocktail. It's when I sit with indie creators and we drink and we basically just like bullshit for an hour. It's a lot of fun. It's the second Monday of every month. The next one is on April 10th, and I will be sitting down to talk to Milton Davis, who is one of the guests of honor for Multiverse Convention here in Atlanta that happens in October. Go Indie Now is one of Multiverse's sponsors, and all of the current hosts of Go Indie Now shows will be interviewing both staff members of Multiverse and guests of Multiverse. So definitely you want to tune in for all of that stuff. And obviously you can also find me in the writing tribe. I am all over there.
Yes, which I'm stoked about doing some of those interviews. I'm not going to lie. I'm also stoked about going to Multiverse again this year. It's going to be a blast. Well, guys, before I bring Mr. David Green in, because we're going to hang out with him for the last 5 minutes, I'm Madilynn Dale, the Chapter Goddess. You can find all of my stuff at my website, thechaptergoddess.com, below here. I, too, host several shows here on Go Indie Now. This week, Character Driven is going to be taking a break, and we're going to be having a different show in its slot, but you can catch Indie Mayhem this week on Monday and Talking Indie Mayhem on Friday. And let me just play this little clip about this show's
All season long, we have looked at the various roles our characters can occupy. But the truth is, their role in our story is the story. So being everything can be a heavy burden. Some rise to the occasion, and some fall. But no matter what, it's always how it has to be. And that's how it goes for all characters.
What advice would you give to anyone struggling to find the character and their arc?
Listen to the character is the first thing. A lot of people want to take control and they don't realize your characters know best. They're going to want to do things that maybe you don't like. Maybe you didn't intend to. Write it out anyway. If it doesn't fit, you can always cut it later. But the first thing you need to do is you need to trust your character. And you need to get to know your character. Your character's always down the line. My characters do it to me. They're always going to surprise you. They're always going to have something hidden, especially if you're writing a series. However, you need to get in tune with that character. If you're sitting there and the character's not talking to you and the plot's not going forward, it could be because you're not being receptive enough. So my advice would be take some time, even open up a new document. Try actually talking to your character. I know maybe it sounds like I'm telling you to be, talk to the people in your head, but it's true. The more you get to know your character and the more you trust them, the easier your story is going to flow. Even if you're doing things that are against what the character wants, you still have to get to know what the character wants first before you can get into any of the meatier parts of the plot.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, totally agree.
I couldn't agree more with her.
That's going to be a great show this week, guys. And also hit the like button, subscribe so you know when new things are uploaded or when we're going to go live again. And don't forget this week's prompts for March of the Writers. It's week 5, the final 5, best compliments ever Full of Thanks, Pals of Pens, How Social of You, and in next week's episode. But now it is time to turn it over to the magnificent David Green as he talks about Empire of Ruin, the series, which I have to admit, these books are amazing and addictive. And he also just sent me the cover to share with you guys. So be honest,
that is gorgeous.
I
so
am
great.
one of the few that have got an art copy of this book, and let me tell you guys, it's full of action and magic. But without further ado, David, take it away.
Hello, I'm David Green, the magnificent David Green. It makes me sound like I run a circus or something, which I would love to do. So thanks very much. And I'm not going to really talk about much of it. I'm just going to read a little bit from the upcoming book, which is out on it's out on ebook on April the 11th. We're going to be doing quite a big campaign for it with the previous books in the series as well. But it's also going to be launching. The paperback is going to be launching earlier at EasterCon, which is a convention that's on over Easter in the UK in Birmingham. So if you are there, I will be there, and the paperback will be launching as well. So basically, a little bit about it. I'm a big Wheel of Time fan, a big Lord of the Rings fan. There's all that kind of a big Jar Abercrombie fan. There's all that kind of influences in there as well. But also there's stuff like Dragon Age Origins, the video game, which was a huge influence on this series, and a lot of things that I kind of grew up with thinking this would be really cool in a fantasy series. And so they do that. So the book cover, the front of it, has Colleen front and center, Cade, who is the gentleman with the missing hand, and Brina, who is in the background, and she is who I'm going to be reading about in this bit. So I have given her a task to accomplish in the third book, which is quite difficult for her, seeing as elves, she's an elf, and elves are persecuted in this world quite badly. And any of them that are seen in public will be kind of, unless they're a slave and they're owned by someone, they'll be hunted and pressed into cages and what have you. So she has to find a way to get to another place and to get a crew together to do it. So it's very, very difficult for her. So she is tailing someone in a city called Seas Keep. So I'm just going to read a little bit for the next few minutes because I've already spoken for 2 minutes. So I hope you enjoy it. Thanks very much. You can find more of my stuff on www.davidgreenwriter.com. So enjoy the reading. Seas Keep had a reputation for smuggling elves to Avastia, but the majority of folk weren't elf-friendly. Not even the smugglers were, as Brina had discovered. Coin motivated them, and a female elf in the prime of her life would fetch a pretty price on the slave market for most. Much more than what one could charge for safe passage. In her experience, some did have altruistic hearts and would do the right thing when pressed. Unfortunately, it had been decades since she'd passed through Seas Keep last, and her contacts were long dead. Selfish or driven by empathy, she had no idea which camp Curran belonged to, but she had to find out, quickly. Interest you in a new cloak? A trader called out, as Brina watched Curran pass through one of the market districts, his head swivelling like a weather vane in a bluster as he searched for fresh custom. Coated with material of my own creation to keep the rain from soaking in, not like that one you're wearing. That won't last you long out in Seas Keep. No, it won't indeed. Brina shook her head, but Curran paused at the next stall over, talking with the woman selling her wares. Pulling her hood tighter and lowering the pitch of her voice, she nodded. Nothing like talking to a trader to blend in. Sounds much better than this old thing. Can't argue with that, she replied in a hoarse rasp. How much? Well, that depends, doesn't it? The trader gave her cloak a speculative look. No interest in her face, her hood concealed. Not when there was coin to be made. Seems to me like you really need this, so it does. Winter's only going to get colder, not to mention wetter. And if you're planning on wearing that thing, I reckon you won't be seeing the spring. He trailed off, eyes flicking over Brina's shoulder. Seeing Curran still engaged in his conversation at the next stall over, Brina followed the trader's stare. The crowd parted as two hooded figures made their way through, their purple veils marking them as members of the widow's sect. Even a pair of the city guards stepped aside. Brina frowned after them, studying the poise and grace with which they walked, then shook her head. The cult didn't interest her. Only Curran did. And while he talked, so would she. Hanging back and watching him without busying herself would be too obvious, even for a human. Widow sect, the trader whispered, Bad for business when they show their veils round here. Why? Well, buying and selling has a tempo, so it does. A feeling. Almost has a life of its own, doesn't it? So when members of the sect appear, everyone gets a little solemn, don't they? Takes the rain out of our clouds. Rain out of our clouds. She'd heard the saying a few times from the locals, like the prospect was an ill thing to consider. Suppose you have to like the wind and rain if you choose to live in Sea's Keep, Tiema humans. Rena glanced after them, the crowd coming together again as they moved away. The sect's business didn't concern her. Right then, only one person in the city interested her, and Corin still stood deep in conversation. If only she could get closer and listen. I'll give you 1 gula for the cloak, Brina muttered, half focused on the trader, her peripheral vision fixed on her quarry, the dark red one. His eyes lit up with sudden excitement. 1 gula, he cried, for this craftsmanship. Look at the weave, the embroidery, an insult. Didn't I mention I have 2 wives and a husband to provide for? The deluge have mercy on us. 8 gula and nothing less. The folk of Seas Keep bargained for everything. On her 3rd day in the city, Brina asked the merchant for a bowl of piping hot cod stew and agreed to pay the 1.5 gula price immediately. The trader had argued with her as the stew grew cold in his bowl, her stomach eating itself, insisting it was worth way less than that, and his grandmother would free herself from Fenn's clutches and smite him down if he agreed to sell it for such a price he'd named himself in the first place. Eventually settled on half a gula, and Brina swallowed her cold fish dinner with a grimace, the coin she'd saved heavy in her pouch. And I will leave it there because I'm out of time. So thanks for listening, and it is always time to go indie now.